Welcome to Tyromper's No Limit Podcast.
Thank you guys so much, guys. You know we're always fired up today, right? But today we got every reason to be fired up. This is probably the most fired up podcast I've ever been on. We got UFC legend and great in the house today, man. This is a man who has pushed his body and mind to elite levels that most of us could just literally never comprehend. I can't wait to get into it with him. A man that's been interviewed by the largest media companies in the entire world. Now he's on our podcast today. We're super grateful for him. This is a man that's been a champion in all elements of the word, a great dad as well. I can't wait to get into life with this guy. This is Mr. Trevor Smith. Welcome to the pod, brother, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Tyler. It's a pleasure, brother. It's been a while since I've done this, so I'm glad you have me on here. I want to hear my story a little bit, brother.
Man, well, dude, I think, you're a man that definitely needs no introduction. I would assume most people watching this are going to know who you are, but maybe could you just give us a little background, little 1-minute elevator speech on who you are, what you're all about?
Yeah, so shoot, I was just a country boy, kind of grew up with my grandparents, liked wrestling, started doing it later in high school. The wrestling took me to college. I was, on the fence of should I go to military? Should I go to college and wrestle? Ended up taking the wrestling route. Wrestled at a JUCO, was All-American, then transferred out to Iowa State, where I had some really good matches, some good years out there, trained under Cael Sanderson, one of the greats, helped him train for his gold in Beijing, and just met some really cool people along the way. That got me introduced to violence. After college, went on to the UFC, fought there very early on. It was actually later in my life. So I was probably 28, 29 when I started doing the fighting thing. That was when I was a dad. So father, fighter, just overall maniac.
There's a lot to unpack with you, man. I can't wait to get into it. So, okay, you're raised on a farm, kind of farm life. Is that right then?
I was down in like Longview, Kelso, right on Oregon, Washington borders, so kind of evergreen trees and green pastures.
So
a
lot of
great way to grow up.
Yeah, same. I grew up in a town called Farmersville, man. There's like 700 kids. We played outside all day, man. We were always just kind of messing around. So that's kind of your childhood. You grew up then just being outdoors a lot.
Yep. Raised by the grandparents. So kind of that traditional lifestyle, like a generation before. And you could see, they always, the kids these days, but it's definitely a different pace and style of parenting in life. So yeah, I was very appreciative to grow up in that fashion, kind of similar, it sounds like, to what you went through.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And so when did you realize, like, you started wrestling at what age?
Shit, I was older. I was probably like a sophomore. I dabbled, had some buddies that did it, but I was like a sophomore in high school and I really started and got into it, went to a couple camps, ended up taking a state title my senior year, didn't wrestle my junior year, but took a state title. And it's like, hey, this is pretty fun. This is challenging. Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest things that drew me to it was just I always had a real strong adrenaline response. So I'd be like good right in the moment, but having to prepare and think about the competitions like that was a challenge. So I always leaned into those kind of challenges.
That's pretty amazing. You must have just had a very natural gift for it then, because to not start until you're, 15 years old, a lot of these people that reach these elite levels, man, you hear of them starting at 4, 5, 6 years old and kind of working up, but that's cool. So you realize you have a real gift at this, right? Then you go to college and wrestle.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
That's awesome, man. And then at what point did you kind of flip the switch and say, I think I can do this for a job, man. This is the career path I want to go.
It really wasn't that exciting, dude. I did it because I needed some strangle therapy in my life. So I had a kid. I was working a desk job, a sales job, and I was like, man, I need some kind of outlet. So I had some buddies that introduced me to jujitsu, and went in there as naturally, a wrestler can transition pretty well into jujitsu. I actually like that better than the wrestling. So I started doing a little jujitsu, and they're like, dude, you ever think about fighting? And I was like, shit, why not? So I think the biggest thing that drove me to the fighting was I got that therapy through the strangles. Then it also allowed me to spend a lot of time with my kids. So I had a kid when I was fresh out of college. I actually think I was like 20, 25, 26 when I had my kid, had him, and it just allowed me to be a dad, spend time with him, and then kind of fight on the side. So I'd say my main profession was actually parenting, and my side gig that kind of supported it was the fight gig and the violence.
It's so awesome, man. I love to hear that. And one thing that I'm really interested in, man, and maybe you can help me understand is, again, you reach these elite levels, right? Like when you're going into these fights, man, these are the best fighters in the world. They're trying to hurt you, right? You're trying to hurt them. I guess, how do you turn that off after a match and then just go be dad? Like, is there a switch you can flip, or how does that work? Can you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, honestly, the dad part happened pretty naturally. I think that support and having him there was actually such a blessing, So as far as the switch, you just kind of show up, you do your thing. When you get done, you go back to your normal life and who you are. it's the preparation and getting ready for that fight that I think is the hardest thing, to show up and be in that mode, be ready to attack, not be, overtrained, overstimulated, and be in that right space is the hardest thing in preparation and getting there. Once you're done with the fight, the rest is all gravy. So coming home to the boy and being able to relax and recover after fights is one of the easier aspects of it. It's getting yourself prepared and showing up on point, not overstimulated, but that right spot for that fight. We go out there and perform to your best, which is the most difficult aspect. Come back to normal life is easy.
Okay, so that's almost like your reward then to come back to the boy.
Absolutely.
That's the easy part. So
absolutely.
How far out do you start? Like, let's say you have a big match, right? And it's so that they've signed the deal, it's coming. At what point, I'm sure you're always in pretty good. I mean, you're in fantastic shape now, post-fight life, man. But like, at what point do you start saying, hey, here's when camp starts. Here's when we start going 8-10 hours a day, or can you kind of walk us through what that looks like?
Yeah, it's usually like 6 to 8 weeks out, depending on what you're trying to do. I think one of the things that I learned through this sport is sometimes you get overtrained. It's one of the worst things in the world, and everybody's different. And that's why I got into psychology a lot, because of my kid, but also you learn a lot about yourself, through that psychology, how to prepare for fights, how to, not be overstimulated, overtrained. I was one of those real super, sympathetic stimulation, always foot on the gas pedal, high cortisol, high heart rate, just attack, go, go, go. And sometimes when you spend too much time training, you lose your best rounds in the gym sometimes. And I think that was a mistake that I made a number of times. A lot of old school coaches are more is better. And it's not always more is better. You got to train smart as you go through this. And everybody kind of has a default setting as an athlete where they're going to be optimal and where they're going to perform best. So it's usually about 6 to 8 weeks out, depending on how you want to do it. And the number of times you're training throughout a day always kind of varied from camp to camp.
Okay. And then, so you have a team that's supporting you as you go. And then you said, is that maybe a hard part to turn that off as you kind of are transitioning? Hey, buddy, I'm your dad here in the morning, then I'm gonna go be this savage guy for a few hours. And I'm going to come back. Is that a difficult part, or was that always pretty easy for you too?
That was pretty easy. I mean, he was my number one priority. So the training did kind of take a back seat, but it was a difficult balance. I remember in the early days, because, me and the old lady broke up when he was 2. So I had prime sole custody of him for a long time. Since he was 2, he's actually visiting for a week right now. So I got this moment without him, but I had full custody his whole life. So sometimes it's balanced. I'd even bring him to the gym to train with me. So sometimes he'd be at my old gym, come in and watch, or go in a little daycare there, depending on what gym I was training at. So he was always a big part of it.
That's awesome. Is he kind of into that now that he's growing older too? Is he liking wrestling and jujitsu and kind of into that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. He's a stud wrestler. He didn't get into it until he's a little bit later, like 6th, 7th, 8th grade. He started wrestling, but took to it. I tried to get him into it when he was younger, but he wasn't ready, so we weren't having it. So I just gave him a little time to develop, and I'm very glad that I didn't force him into it like some of the parents do now.
Man, that's a great takeaway right there, man. And I'm going to learn from that too, because I've seen other dads where they really push their kids so much into, well, the dad was great at soccer, he wants the son. So from the time the kid is 5 years old, man, they're like year-round soccer, and then they hit 13, they're burnt out, right? So you kind of let him discover his love on his own. It sounds like.
Yep, absolutely. I took him to some of those practices early on, and they didn't quite catch, which is sad because we'd had some great coaches. And I've recently had him say, "Dad, why didn't you get me into it sooner?" And it's like, bro, I tried to. You weren't having it, so it came at the right time for you.
That's awesome. If he were to go that route, like you went, and be a professional fighter and go into that, is that something you would support too?
Oh, absolutely. I'd love it. I don't think he's going to go that route. He's a great athlete, like across the board with all of his sports. He does the mixed martial arts, the boxing, the strength, he does it, but I wouldn't want that for a profession for him. If he did it, I'd be fully supportive and have a ton of information and knowledge and experience to share with him, which would be exciting.
That's awesome, man. I want to back up and ask you one question, because when you thought about it, something triggered in my mind. You said, I was working a sales job and I just felt kind of pent up, And brother, I can relate to this, and I'm not an elite level athlete like you are, but 4 or 5 years ago, I was working at a bank job every day, and you get metrics from that kind of, they tell you if you're successsul or not by sales and all these things. But I had this kind of burning in me, man, that like, there's got to be more to life than this. Like, I got to get out. I got to run. I started running sprints on my lunch break. I put a punching bag down in the basement and just started hitting it on. I always felt pinned up, because I feel like humans aren't really designed, and men especially, to just sit for like freaking 14 hours a day, And so when did that light bulb moment go off for you? And do you think that's something that all men and maybe sort of a part of society even that could benefit from what you said of get out and push yourself physically, even if it's not jujitsu or fighting, it's some kind of physical activity, right?
Yeah. No, I think it's totally important. The release, the exercise, burn, especially for me, like I said, you get the cortisol, the adrenaline in your body, especially when you work in a sales job and you have those metrics. Did you hit this goal? Did you do this? Like, even if you crush it, you're still under that stress of making stuff happen. If you can go out and run those sprints and be a Viking and go outside and metabolize some of that negativity, I think it's the best thing in the world that anybody can do. And that's part of the reason I love this job, working the front of this gym so much, is I see the effect it has on people. One, getting that exercise, burning that energy, but also mastering their bodies, mastering that physical effect. And what's better to master than violence, and know that you can, take out another human being or another man if they ever mess with you. It's pretty satisfying to see. So yeah, we need more of it in our lives.
That's what you hear this term, this toxic masculinity, all this stuff. And I look at it in just the opposite, man. I say, a man like you is zero threat to anybody, because dude, you're the toughest guy pretty much anywhere you go. You don't need to be that loud mouth that's chirping at people, because you kind of know, man, I can probably end this in 5 seconds if I choose to,
Yep. No, and I tell everybody that comes in here, some of the toughest dudes in the world are the nicest guys I know, because they don't have anything to prove. They're going to be chill. They're going to be nice. They're going to be loving. But if you put them in a corner, or you're doing something that's not appropriate, they're the dudes that are going to step up and do something. So yeah, toxic masculinity is people that are faking it. It's the swole guys that come in trying to be something they're not necessarily, and those insecurities manifest. I think through martial arts, most people get a pretty sincere confidence in themselves and don't need to flex and show off and do anything beyond just be themselves and be confident.
Yeah, I've noticed too, even in the gym, the guys that have helped me the most when I started lifting, I weighed like 149 pounds soaking wet when I started. So I'm up, put on 20 pounds of muscle or so over the last, 7 years. But a lot of those guys that helped me, man, they were just these jack dudes that they were just kind. They just wanted to help. They had nothing to prove. They just, and I feel like that's been my like kind of takeaway as I've kind of journeyed through the last 5-6 years of self-improvement too. All the super swole dudes, all the elite guys are the ones that they just want to help, man. And that's a pretty cool thing. Can you talk about how you help guys now, and a little bit about your job and what you've transitioned to now? Because it sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. So man, I get people that want to come in and check out the gym and do it. I've really seen this place transition since we've been doing it. It used to be more of a fighter focus, kind of pound your chest, who's the toughest guy in here, hard spars. We still have a lot of dudes that do that. We have some high level dudes in here that train, but the focus has really been just taking civilians that want to learn that high level cage fighting skill and introduce them to amazing coaching. So when people come in here, they have options all night. Like, one side of the gym focuses on their stand up all night, boxing, kickboxing, and Muay Thai. The other side of the gym, they focus on strangling fools all night. So that's going to be submission wrestling, no-gi, or traditional Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So when people come in here, I love to tell them, it's your buffet of violence, brother. All my memberships are unlimited access. You eat to your fill, whether you want to strike, strangle, do a little bit of both. Get your ass in here, change your life, master yourself. It's a fun experience and cool place. So everybody's a little different case, but I introduce them to the gym, see what they want to do, and it grows from there.
It's so awesome, man. Have you personally witnessed quite a few guys that maybe come in, hey, they're intimidated, they don't know where to start, and then you kind of see that development and see their whole life change and turn around?
Oh, absolutely, dude. I see both ends of that spectrum. I see some people come in and never train, just play with their dudes in the streets and think they're already at the UFC level. They come to a quick realization that it's not the case. Now, other people come in here just passive and timid. They gain that confidence, gain that mastery, until they turn into the best version of themselves possible. It's really fun to see. That's probably my most satisfying part of this job.
It's so cool, man. And the cool thing is, I think when you start to develop your body a little bit, right, your mind changes, and there's that light bulb that goes off there too. Can you try and talk about your mindset a little bit too? And, I'm really interested in to hear from you. People, you'll hear these outside voices say, oh, these UFC guys are really tough or whatever, but they're not the smartest guys. I've heard people say that. And I'm like, dude, do you realize the high level of chess? Because at the point you got to, everybody's physically gifted. You're top 0.1% in the world, right? And so is it as much of a sort of mental battle as physical, would you say?
Yeah, it's more mental. You hear everybody say, that's 90% mental. You've heard, baseball coaches, football coaches, and that's really what it boils down to, is your mentality. And I think as you come in, you're going to be a lot more confident in your fights if you're doing the right thing to build that confidence, to train appropriately. If you put in the work, the fights are going to be a lot easier. But for me, the biggest battle was that mental side of how you deal with the preparation, the fear, the anxiety, the cortisol. meditation and certain psychological factors were one of the biggest impacts that I ever had in this sport. And I wish I would have had some of the knowledge even years ago when I stopped doing it that I have today, as far as, man, everybody knows exercise is amazing for your body, right? Get to the gym, lift some weights. You can change your body, but not everybody does it. And I found it's the same side on the mental side of it, of doing the things like the meditation. You want biceps, you go to the gym, you do your curls, you get sexy doing the curls for the girls, right? If you want to have a strong mind and mentality, you got to meditate. You got to find out your psychology. You got to find out your baseline and how to affect that through exercises. So that meditation, even me, I've been slacking on it, but I've realized the impact it has on that top-down control of making sure you can be, a self-actualized and best performing human. That meditation session is like doing curls for your brain to strengthen that sucker so you can whoop some ass.
That's pretty awesome, man. I love that. My wife and I have been doing like breath work together and some stuff like that before bed. And I noticed just life gets so busy, but if you take some time out and you pause a lot more, man, and you kind of work on that, you're right, man. You can develop your mind. You can develop that better. When you talk about, hey, I wish I had done that, you seem like such a lifelong learner to me, Trevor. Like you're just, you're always trying to get better at everything you do, man. I admire that so much. If you could go back then to your fighting days, you would have incorporated that in your training, you're saying, like all the meditation?
And I did. Well, I think I would have incorporated more consistency through the process, right? So you learn how to get to a certain point, you see some huge results, and then maybe you start slacking or don't put that same focus on some of those things. So when it comes to the meditation, that's I don't want to get too much into the psychology and stuff. We only got a short amount of time, but dude, the things that you can learn through the process of meditation and psychology, understanding your baseline. One of the biggest things for me was attachment theory. I don't know if you've done, learn what your attachment schema is, but understanding the relationships we've had through our lives, whether it was a troubled childhood, a loving childhood, whether you get a secure base or some kind of ambivalent attachment, the more you understand about your attachment, where you come from, the more I think you can be an effective human being in your older age and start to surround yourself with those positive attachments, those positive relationships, and really change the way you approach and interact with the world.
Wow, man, that's beautifully said, man. I just got chills right there. I appreciate
that. Forget about it.
That's pretty cool. It's, you mentioned something there too, where you're kind of coasting along in life, you're doing really well, and then the things that are good for you. Every single human being, every person, on earth knows we should work out, move our bodies, eat healthy food. But yet just in America, man, we're approaching 70% overweight and obese. Well, everybody has the knowledge. So what do you think is that barrier that holds people back from applying that knowledge?
Man, just that consistency and the patience. I don't know if we're all distracted by our TVs, our social medias. That's why I try to stay off the social media too. But I think it's just consistency and making sure you can see those results. We've gotten lazy, I think, as a culture, and I'm guilty of it too sometimes. I know I should do something that's productive, lift weights, do the meditation, but you get drawn to the TV, you get drawn to your Twitter, your Instagram feed, and it's easy to put that shit on the back burner and, oh shit, it's already 10 o'clock. Well, I'll do that tomorrow. And tomorrow becomes next week and becomes next year. And pretty soon we're overweight. We're, not healthy mentally, and we're being distracted by all these different things that are out there. So I think finding that consistency and avoiding those distractions is going to be one of the biggest things. But I don't know, what's your take? What's your perspective? How do I stay consistent?
Yeah, I think it's like a lot of intent. You know what I mean? Like for me, I call it stacking wins, where like, I think today was 1,041 days in a row, or 1,241 days in a row. Now I've done a gratitude journal right when I wake up. So every single day I wake up and the first thing I do is chug a water and write down 10, 12 things I'm grateful for. And you talk about that mental muscle. It just reprograms my brain to see the good, right? And to see the world and the blessings around me. But brother, it's so weird. Like, I know it's good for me. I know I should do it every day. Still, like almost 4 years in, every single day, my mind will tell me, you don't need to do it today, bro. Just skip it, but you gotta like know that why, that have that like deep desire in you of why you're doing it, why it's important, and keep that vision, I think, of like, I know it's good for me, whether I feel like it or not, I'm just going to do it, Yeah,
for sure.
And kind of keep moving forward. Could I ask you one thing here is, how did you battle against that fear, or did you have that fear coming? Because brother, I'm the amateur of amateurs. I think I've done 3 sessions now of jujitsu, but like I know when I was fighting this guy, he'd been fighting 5 or 6 years, the one that gave me my first few lessons. I know he's going to submit me, anytime like I'd come at him and he would just say, you don't want to do that because I can do this. And then all of a sudden I'm in a chokehold, and it's like, how did you kind of break past that fear of fighting these elite guys, these best guys in the world? And I mean, let's be honest, they're trying to hurt you, brother. They're trying to do anything they can. So how do you overcome that?
Through the meditation, through the preparation. Like I said, I think if you're preparing right, you can kill a lot of that fear. But that was part of the battle for me, is how do you deal with that adrenaline, that fight or flight response, and how do you consistently go out there and perform? So that was one of my biggest difficulties in doing it, is I have that super strong sympathetic response where you're like, and that's cool in the immediate fight. When you got that adrenaline, you can freak out and have that Hulk strength. But when you do, and you have 2, 3, 4 months leading up to it, and you've got the week of, you're sitting in a hotel for a week thinking, ruminating all of it. So my two best things that I did that ever made me feel best for fights, and it should have been more consistent than it was, is to prepare consistently. Make sure you're prepared, make sure you're doing the right things to set yourself up for success. That kind of preparation is going to make you much less fearful and more determined to go out there and get in the win. And then that meditation was huge. So you get that top down. I say top down control. I got a handy model here. So everybody has their brain stem, right? We got our limbic region in the middle here, and we got our prefrontal cortex. So if we're using that human brain, we're keeping control instead of and I said this to my kid too, instead of having that low road response, instead of freaking out, getting your emotions, getting into that fight or flight down here, when you're not using that human brain. By meditating, I keep that top-down control. I solidify and I strengthen that muscle. So instead of me flipping out and having that limbic response and that cortisol, that adrenaline drop you hear from so many fighters, you're able to maintain your composure and not freak out when you go out there. So I'd say my two main things were preparation, physically, making sure in the gym doing the right thing with the right partners. And then secondly, getting that meditation, getting that mental training to make sure you can have that top-down control and control those emotions and that adrenal response and that fight or flight response.
That's all. And I think how you can develop that too. I just had a light bulb takeaway. And I think why jujitsu, boxing, all these combat sports are so beneficial. It makes you develop that, right? Like when a guy is on top of you, you can't freak out, right? Like you're training your mind in that situation to remain calm, do the things that you know how to do, or keep getting better at those things. And that's probably why that's so beneficial, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely, dude. There's nothing more primitive than violence and fighting. And jiu-jitsu is a way you can get that feeling and exposure without having to get brain cells knocked out. So yeah, jiu-jitsu is one of the best things for civilians that really want to learn, that want to grow, that want to get used to those emotions, that adrenaline, that fight or flight. Come out here, do some jiu-jitsu. You're going to get a great workout in, but you're also going to learn how to control those emotions. It's one of the best ways you can do it.
That's awesome. And I kind of wish they had options for, like, in schools, man. Why aren't they teaching this stuff? Like it's always kind of bothered me. I'm not sure why we're going away from that now. I know my nephew's in 8th grade. They won't even let them play dodgeball. They won't let them. They literally wouldn't let my daughter play tag at recess because she couldn't touch other kids. And it's like, we're getting away from this. And then we wonder, why do all these kids have anxiety? Why do all these kids have this stuff? And I think you hit the nail on the head, dude. We're primal. Like for as long as humans have been humans, man. I mean, when I was like 8 years old, I can remember me and my 4 best buddies just fighting. We just wanted to see who was the toughest. We just, we hugged afterwards.
Yep.
We were all buddies still, but we just want to see,
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think that builds a skill for when you're older. How do I deal with it? How do I master myself? So now, instead of me fighting my buddies, I got some dude on the street trying to steal my lunch money. That's a nice skill to know. I'm gonna be able to control my emotions, but I'm also gonna have a skill set I developed from fighting with my friends, to where if I really need to use it, we evolved over such a time frame that we think we can beat evolution now and be so sophisticated. And I think that's the biggest mistake everybody makes. We are, like you said, very primitive creatures, and we need some more of that in our lives. And I think it's one of the things that's missing with our society today, for sure. I agree.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, I wanted to ask, again, back to that insane mental, like, chess match. How much, when you found out your opponent, so you get the card or whatever, and you see who you're going to fight, do you study then what he does? Do you break down film a lot with that guy? Do you watch with coaches and say, hey, we think we can pick apart this spot? Or is it not like that? Because I've always kind of wondered that in the high level UFC matches.
I've done some of that in the past, not as much as I probably should have. And I think every fighter is a little different. A lot of fighters like, I don't care what he does, this is what I'm going to do. But a lot of that's ego talking too. So one of the mistakes I made is I found the UFC for almost 10 years, but I was more of a journeyman, never really hit my stride through the injuries and the things. I had a lot of tough fights. It was almost like, as a dad, rolling off the couch and taking these fights and just trusting my athletic ability, my overall craziness, when there's much more preparation and things that could have been done. So instead of going out and saying, I've been doing this for 10 years, I'll strike with anybody. No, I've been doing this 10 years. I need to stick to the things that I'm good at and execute a game plan. So Everybody's a little different. I should have done more of it. I watched some video. I actually do more preparation helping other people for fights than I did my own. But no, it was more of me when I was doing it, executing my game plan, which often varied from what I was training, what I was doing in camp. So I've been boxing a lot lately. Let's go out and box and try to execute our striking. But necessarily that's not the best plan when you fight one of the best strikers in the world and you're best at wrestling and getting people on the ground. So every fighter is going to be different. Who's in your camp? How are you helping you train? I think the video is helpful to an extent, but I don't think people should obsess on it.
Okay. That's a fair point. I like that, man. So can I ask you this then, when your UFC fight career kind of ended, how was that transition? Was that a little rough? Cause I know, some professional athletes, they talk about it. Well, that was kind of my identity, right? That I'm in the spotlight all the time. I'm, hundreds of thousands, millions of people are now watching me fight. And then all of a sudden I, kind of go to a more civilian life. Was that a difficult transition or not?
To an extent, it was to say goodbye to that. I miss the challenge, right? No matter the nerves or how crazy it feels getting out there, sometimes you miss that excitement and adrenaline. It's one of the best. I think it's the best drug. I haven't done too many drugs in my life, but it's the best natural drug. And the feeling that you have in this world is to prepare for something, go out there, take a fight, and come out on top. The response and the euphoria that you get from that experience is unprecedented. So I do miss that feeling of going out, winning a fight, and going out, grabbing a couple of beers with your friends afterwards, and just that high of, oh my God, that was amazing. And doing it in front of those people. But my transition was a little easier. I'm still in the gym. I'm still around the fight stuff. So I'm doing something that I really enjoy. And like I said, I still got my primary my job, which is raising my kid and being a dad. So not a lot changed, just those weekend excursions to go beat people up.
Yeah, I love your Twitter profile bio that says I've been in a fight or two. Yeah, I'm a dad that's been in a fight or two.
Sounds about right.
It sounds like, man, your son has really just been the biggest kind of guiding force on your life. Can you kind of talk a lot about that fatherhood? What that's meant to you? I know a lot of people that might follow me on Twitter or what I do, man, that's basically my main thing, man. I love being a dad. That's why I transitioned out of corporate. I want to be home more, Can you kind of talk about that in your life?
Yeah, no, it's one of the best experiences. It is the best experience and best thing that I've done with my life. And I think it's hard to understand until you're a dad. But I think for me is I didn't always have the best father figures and parents, even my grandparents. You grew up in an environment where their grandparents don't necessarily want to raise you. So I was raised in an environment where you didn't necessarily feel like you're always wanted and loved and supposed to be there. So my goal when I had a kid was, how can I make him feel loved all the time? How can I make him feel that someone who's present really cares about him and give him that secure attachment, give him that secure base so he can attack the world and be a confident adult. So seeing the effect of those actions and kind of changing my behaviors and breaking a cycle of the way that I was treated through my lifetime and seeing that impact my kid and see how successful he can be, how confident he can be is one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. And it's helped me learn a lot more about who I am and how I should interact with the world and be a better person.
And that hits all the feels right there, brother. I appreciate you saying that. I just want to say, man, like from just a fan of yours and, you compete at these high levels and people look up to you and admire you for probably a lot of the cool things you've done. Just hearing you say that, and you said, break that cycle. That's so amazing. And that's something that my father did as well. And I'm forever grateful for, man. And I think your son will always honor you and look back at you someday as not just dad, the fighter or whatever, but hey, that dad was there. He was present. Yeah. He equipped me to go handle life and do that. And he'll continue on that legacy, I bet too, man. That's amazing, man. Thanks for sharing that, brother.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler.
That's awesome. Well, dude, I don't want to keep a ton of your time, and I'm incredibly grateful for you coming on, man. I end every podcast with what I call rapid fire questions. Do you mind if I fire off 5 questions at you real quick?
Sure. Let me get a little sip of coffee. 5 questions.
Repping the Starbucks on this on this pod today.
Should I blur that out? Yeah, I just drove to Texas too, so I had that long drive. Let's go. Give me the 5 questions, Tyler.
Here we go, man. I'm interested in this. What was your favorite hype song or your pre-fight song? Like you're in the locker room pre-fight. What's your hype music that's going off in your ear, man?
Shit, I would try to calm down a little bit before I get out there. So I didn't really have hype music. Usually more meditation and chill, especially if I was doing it right. It was Nirvana, Ring of Fire was usually my intro song that I like best. Nice. Where the bad folks go when they die. Anyway, Nirvana, Ring of Fire. Let's
Come on, man. Keep that going, man. You're the first ever, and then they start to sing on the pod, man. I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Forget about it.
That's awesome, man. That's kind of cool. I just hit one more thing where it's not a one size fits all. There are probably some fighters who needed that extra adrenaline and to get hyped up. So that's where they went to, but you recognized and knew yourself where you needed to get to that level. And I think anybody listening can apply that to their own life, right? Like keto is a great choice for some. Carnivore is a great choice for some. But you gotta know yourself and get to ask yourself these right questions and learn what works for you best, right?
Yeah. What's the baseline? What do you need to make you happy, baby? Everybody's a little different.
That's
We're
right.
all individuals.
I love that. All right. Number 2, man. I'm interested in this. What's the best part of your day right now?
Shit, the best part of my day. Honestly, I think it's just making new friends in here. So every night I get to meet new individuals. There's a huge number of people that come to this gym, but just learning each individual story and how I can impact their lives and where I should push them. And I love the job and what I'm doing right now. I love to come in here. So I've realized, and actually over this weekend, I spent with my friends, we're done some things, but my gym, my business in here, my exercise, my strength with people, and my son are some of the most important things in my life. So those are my 3 things that I really enjoy most. But I look forward to every day coming here and making new friends. From I work a couple hours in the evening. We're in here 5, 6, 7, but making those new friends and impacting those lives is probably one of my favorite things throughout the day right now, if I had to put it up there.
That's so awesome, man. I love to hear that. It seems like you're a man who's very intentional about your life, how you spend all your time. Like, you love being a dad, so you're going to put a lot of energy and your best time into that. You love developing the gym, relationships, helping people that way, that you're going to put a lot of energy into that. You love learning and knowledge and getting better at all those things. You're just going to keep putting energy into that, man. That's very wise, man. That's awesome, dude. I love that.
Yeah, very astute observation. Tyler, you're on point with it. That's very accurate.
I like that, man. All right. Number 3, what is the toughest mental battle you've ever had to overcome in your life?
Toughest mental battle was those walks to the octagon. I guess were one of the toughest, one of the most intense feelings you can have is walking in. It wasn't even the fear of the opponents. I think it was more of that outcome dependence is one of the things you try to get away from is you need to win this, you need to do this. And if I could go back, I would have been more secure in some of the things that I did as far as, you can't make fight your only income, especially when you're a dad and you got to make things happen when every fight comes down to, even if you have a bad back or ankle and can barely walk, you got to go out there and still try to win a fight. That's a very scary thing to do. And it just adds to it. That's why I talk about your preparation. If you are dependent on that fight to make a check and to make a living and to feed your child, that's a super stressful thing. And that was sometimes one of the biggest battles or the biggest things that I had to overcome on the mental side was having that natural, sympathetic response. So you're crazy. And then adding and stacking on, you need to win this so you can feed your kid. You need to win this so you can get your new contract was one of the toughest things. It was hard enough to go out there and fight and overcome those emotions, not just because of the opponents, just because of what it was, but to add those extra stresses just made that mental battle a little bit more difficult.
And I can relate to that a lot. Have you ever played poker, Trevor?
No, I heard you're a stud at it. I'd stay away from that poker. I'll lose all my money.
We'll play a friendly game if we ever play, man. But
yeah, take all my money.
I've seen that in that world of that too, man, where poker's a difficult enough game where guys are trying to take your money, right? It's a mental kind of game of chess but then if you add that outside stress of, man, I got 3 kids and I have to win this game, you almost never play your best, right? And so I kind of talk about that with anybody I coach at poker. The money on the table can't mean anything to you. You just have to be solely focused on doing your best in that moment, or you kind of have no hope. And it sounds like that's the same thing with fighting, right? If you're already thinking, I got to win this so I can get the next contract, so I can get your mind's probably not right where it needs to be, right?
Yeah. Well, especially with fighters, a lot of them come out, they're kind of misfits, they're kind of crazy. Most of them have a little bit of a different background. A lot of them can overcome it, but a lot of them come into this situation a little bit crazy and dependent on that check. So one of the things I say to anybody that comes in here to fight is you find another job so you're not dependent on just those checks. Find a way to support yourself and to live your daily life and make that training something you do on the side. And then you're going to reach those top peaks until you're making that Conor McGregor money, baby. Get a normal job so you can feel secure in what you're doing on a daily basis and train without being outcome dependent on that fight.
And that so much wisdom, man. I preach the same thing to all my poker buddies. Like I played poker for a job for 9 years, and I don't tell anybody to play poker as their sole job. Like, do some other side incomes, have multiple streams of income, and then, you can build your bankroll on the side. And if you get to that elite level, then great, man. Then you can go for it. But especially if you have a family to feed and things like that. So a lot of wisdom there, man. I appreciate that.
A lot of similarities in poker and the fight game, it sounds like too.
Seems like it. Yeah. As you're talking, it's just kind of lightened up my brain on a lot of the same stuff, man. So I appreciate that. All right. I already asked you this actually, would you want your child to pursue fighting in MMA? You kind of touched on that already though.
And I go back and forth. But yeah, if he wants to, if he's really passionate about it, I'd support him. I think there's better things that he can do with his life. But if he loves it and he wants to be a part of it, going out and being violent, I think it's such an awesome sport. It's been demonized. It's been, people talk negatively about it. There's going to be some CT and some other things that are going to be accompanied with it, obviously, just like some sports. But if you have a passion for it, you can, minimize some of those impacts and go out there and just love what you're doing. We're not alive very long. Go do the shit that really makes you happy. You try to mitigate some of those consequences of being violent, but go out there and do what makes you happy. If it makes them happy, I'd absolutely support it.
Amen, man. I appreciate that too. Most of the people that talk, actually every person that's ever talked bad about it has probably never done it too. That's kind of what I'm realizing at life. All the people that hate Joe Rogan have never listened to Joe Rogan. All the people that tell you don't do MMA have never tried MMA, right? Like that's kind of just like the thing of life, man. So
absolutely.
All right, my brother. Last one, Trevor. What's a surprising fact or something most fans that wouldn't know about you?
Shoot, it might even be the kid thing. I didn't go preaching from the rooftops, but I love it. Surprising fact about me. The kid and raised up with my grandparents. I think those are surprising things, and then things that not everybody realizes, in your life. And the two things were super impactful for me was one, having a kid at a young age and having to raise him. And like I said, I can't emphasize enough the psychology and the understanding of my background and what I've been through and how that impacts and influences him and the person he grows up to be was one of the greatest blessings in my life. And I don't say it enough, and people maybe don't realize it about me, but I'd be such a different human being. I'm still kind of an asshole sometimes, but I would be such a different, less compassionate, and not nearly as quality a human being if I didn't have my son to guide me on this journey. I'm his dad, I'm guiding him, but in that journey, I've discovered a lot about myself and been a much better leader.
Man, that's all. I think if we do parenting right, which you do, our kids make us better, man. They really do. I think my daughter is 6.5, and I thank her a lot because in many ways she changed my life. I wanted to be a better man for her, and it sounds like very similar in your regard, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's not even about, some people get too stressed out trying to be a perfect parent. Nobody's going to be a perfect parent. We just got to do the best that we can and not totally, traumatize those children. I think if you go through and do the best you can and not leave any lasting trauma, you're going to do a damn good job. Just be there for them.
That's right, man. As Zach Small always says, presence over presence, man. You just want to be present. You just want to be there for him, man. I love that. Well, brother, I know you got some people to strangle today, so we're going to let you get back to your job, man.
Appreciate it, Tyler. It was a pleasure.
Bottom of my heart, man, Trevor. I really appreciate you coming on, man. You're an absolute champ and a legend. You and your boy ever in Vegas, man. I'll hook up rooms for you guys, and it'd be awesome. Maybe we could grab a hike. You could strangle me out a couple times. That would be fun too.
Absolutely. And you may not have seen the last. I might have to come back and do a little something, whether it's strangling or going out there and taking some more fights. You might see me again. I'm 41, a little older, but you better watch out for that old guy. It might be coming.
Dude, we're dropping some. This is a feature here on the Tyromper podcast, baby. We might have Trevor coming back. I like that, brother. That's amazing, man. Well, keep us posted, man. We'll be watching your journey, and I appreciate you, man. Thanks for all you do, brother.
Absolutely. Later, Tyler.
All right, guys. Thanks. This is Tyromper's No Limit Podcast, episode number 26. We got the legend Trevor Smith on. Thank you guys for listening. Go have the greatest day of your life, man. Be kind to others. Be kind to yourself. Let's go change the world, baby. Have a great day.